Nice night to be there. Go Jake.
We'll be there next Friday for a double header.
Oh, very cool. Hopefully the schedule's in your favor too.
So,
Years ago, but of course, this is the first time since President Biden was elected, and clearly his most important and most challenging meeting on the world stage yet.
Okay, let me get us out on record.
Contrary was true, that there was no hostility, he said.
So polite now. It tells you it's being live streamed, it's being recorded. YouTube has, Zoom has changed a lot of their features. Okay, we call the workshop meeting of June 16th to order. Stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Christina, would you do the roll call, please?
Councilwoman Allen. Can you hear me?
Here.
Oh, Councilwoman Hogan Depew,
Here.
Councilman Hewitt. Absent. Councilman Paddock
Here.
and Supervisor Baden.
Here. Okay, the first order of business is the local law. Now, Mary Lou, this was a question Kate asked me before she went on vacation. This was local law 3 because we were already doing public hearings for 2, but we haven't adopted 2. So does this change to 2? You're muted.
the order goes in the order of filing.
Okay. So Christina, you can let Kate know, or if you're filing this, this will be renamed to local law 2 in the resolution.
Okay.
So, let me get it up on the screen and share it for you guys. And here comes Councilman Hewitt. Okay, so this is the local law. Well, it says 3. When we adopted it, will become 2. And oh, I'm trying to scroll on the wrong computer. The one change that was made was the Tobacco Road. We changed it from Main Street to the terminus of Tobacco Road. It says Main Street to the rear boundary of 15 Tobacco Road. That is the community center property. So it will go from Main Street to the rear of that property and then not affect the residents that are further down past the community center. And that was at Councilman Hewitt's request. That was revised as of 6/7 and circulated to everybody by email on that date. So we are past the 7 days excluding Sunday, as the law states. So does anybody have any questions, comments on it? If not, we'll move forward with the adoption of the resolution. Okay, so the resolution will read, the town board adopts, and it will be changed to local law 2 of 2021, amending chapter 132 vehicles and traffic of the code of the town of Rochester, and requests the town clerk file such with the New York State Secretary of State. Do I have that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the local law? Okay, Christina, roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Anowen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hogan Depew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye.
And I just want to remind people, Mike, that this is not effective until the filing with the Secretary of State. So if people are still parked on those roads tomorrow,
Correct,
you're not going to be towing them.
correct. This will be filed. We'll get the corrected number on this and take off the revised and submit it to Christina tomorrow, and then she will, I think Kate set it all up, so you just have to transmit it, I believe, Christina.
Yes, I have it all set.
Great.
Kate is absolutely wonderful.
Yes, she
She's got
is.
it all set up for me.
She left everybody very, very well covered.
Mhm.
So it will be submitted tomorrow, and we will get back a notification when it is actually filed with them, and at that time is when it takes effect. So thank you for pointing that out, Mary Lou.
You're welcome.
Let me stop screen share.
Mike, while we're waiting to go forward, can I ask that the agenda be changed a little bit?
Sure.
We put the resolution 6 ahead of 4 and do the 2 executive sessions together and then close the meeting?
The only reason that resolution is we have to talk about it will involve the executive session discussion before we adopt that resolution. That's the only reason I had it out at the end. Unless the board wants to discuss the resolution before we talk about the details.
No, that's good.
Yeah, that's the only reason it's broken out the way it is. But I've already told Christina that when we get to executive session, she can drop off and we'll just take our own notes for the rest of the meeting.
My concern was more for the public. I know
Oh.
Christina can just go because putting it at the end is meaning we're going to open from the executive session and then make a resolution.
Understood, but
That's why.
we can do it. I just, the topic involves part of the executive session discussion unless everybody is comfortable with it, in which case then it doesn't matter and we don't need to talk about it in executive session. I assumed we might want to have some conversation in executive session before we adopted the resolution. So we can certainly do it either way.
Videotaping, and they even asked you what your message is.
It's at the pleasure of everyone else. I just thought it might be
Yep.
easier.
No, it's an
end.
absolutely, yeah, I understand the suggestion and normally would do it that way. I just had it that way because we had to talk about it first, so. I do need to add that new resolution that I emailed everybody. I'm gonna need to pull it up unfortunately in my email. 'Cause I wrote it in the email, apologies.
I've got it. Mike, you want me to make it?
Yeah, if you don't mind, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that the town board authorizes the supervisor to complete and submit the application to request American Rescue Plan Act funding.
Do I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Okay, any discussion and that email just appeared today. It was new news. We had no idea that we were gonna have to actually apply for the funding. It's never been mentioned before, and leave it to New York State to change the rules, so.
Can we explain it for the public? I mean, we had it all to read, but can we
Yep.
explain a little for the
Absolutely.
public?
So what this is every municipality in the country is being awarded American Rescue Plan funding through the American Rescue Plan Act for towns smaller than us. Do you know the number, Mary Lou? It's like 50,000 or something like that.
I don't know off the top of my
The
head.
money goes for cities and counties and towns larger than, I think it's 50,000. I didn't really look at it because it certainly doesn't affect us. The money goes directly to those agencies. For smaller towns and villages, the money is dispersed to New York State, who then has 30 days to disperse it to the municipality, but they can automatically extend it 30 days on their own, and then they can request an additional 30 days from the federal treasury. It was confirmed that that money was received the end of May by the state. So currently they have until the end of June 30th to disperse the money to us, but since they're saying the application is due July 9th, I'm assuming they're going to take the additional 30 that they're allowed to take without even asking. So my guess is the money will come the end of July or early August. This application process was a surprise to us, but I just got the email this afternoon. It's a matter of filling out some information on a form and sending it in. Mary Lou, it's due July 9th, but Mary Lou said, why wait? Let's just get it done and submit it. So we believe we are earmarked for $790,000. That was the estimate that was given from Senator Gillibrand's office and was confirmed by Congressman Delgado's office. We do not know that to be a 100% true fact, but it apparently is based on population. So if you do the math, it's fairly straightforward. So I suspect it will be in that vicinity. It's very detailed of what it can and can't be used for. We will get half now and half next year, and we'll have until 2023, I believe, to spend it. And we will certainly be discussing in the upcoming meetings, once the guidelines come out of what we can and can't spend it on. There are general guidelines. The city of Kingston actually shared with me their manual that they got. It's 100 and some pages long of talking through the process and the guidelines. And I'm guessing probably there'll be similar guidelines for the towns. Three of the items it can be spent on is community water and sewer, community broadband. It can also be spent on any funding that can be dispersed to either businesses, not-for-profit agencies, or anything that were impacted by the COVID. It can be used for reimbursement to towns for expenses due to COVID. It can also be used for towns for reconciliation of anticipated budget numbers that were reduced because of the COVID, although it's a pretty complicated formula of how to figure that. It's not just if your budget said this, you get the difference, because they want to be sure your budget was a realistic number to start with. And I'm sure there'll be other categories that they'll outline. So until we get the rules, my feeling is we can all be thinking about it, and we've brainstormed a few ideas, but until we actually get the rules, we probably should wait to figure it out of where we're going. So this is just to get the initial funding or get the process started. Moving next, so discussion items. So,
Yeah, didn't
Need
vote.
to
oh, thank you. Christina, roll call, please.
Here I am. Councilwoman Allen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hogan Appeal,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Okay, next is a discussion on the short-term rentals law. We had a lot of public hearing comments. Want to put up the last version of it here for you. And walk through it and see if anybody has any ideas. Actually, if the board doesn't mind, based on some of the comments, I just went through and made some notes on my own. Is the board's okay with it? If I can just put that document up, which I've already started marking up in red, so you can see the changes. But it'll save us going back and forth. So if the board is okay with that, I'm gonna go ahead and share that. And bear in mind, these are strictly my thoughts based on the comments received, and there are a couple others that I didn't necessarily include in here that I wanted to talk through with some people, so. The first is just changing, adding STR next to short-term rental because typing out short-term rental every time, everywhere, obviously got a little tedious for all of us, so that will just, it allowed a shortcut. In the purpose, I was including this section just because it may, a lot of people came to us with very specific examples, and I actually spoke to that one gentleman who they were in the middle of like a 7-year plan, if you remember right, and they had built one, but they were all on one property. And in talking with him, and I sent him Jerry's way, and I said, you might want to look at either a bed and breakfast because you live on the property, or look at the category of inn, which he also fit the definition as an alternative. And that is a planning board approval, but it's a one-time board approval. You get your approval and you're done. And you don't have to come back on a yearly basis. You do have to get your annual inspection as a bed and breakfast or an inn. But I added this into that say applicants may desire to review the requirements for approval of bed. It should say bed and breakfast, not beds and breakfasts. In motels and hotels, I added those only because there are other accommodations. Probably this, I would say, let's take them out, and because most people are not at that level of so I would say approval of bed and breakfast and or inns, and may wish to consider such as alternative options which remain with the land, however, may involve planning board review prior to approval. It's just, I think a lot of people think only of the short-term rental as a short-term rental, and sometimes what they're really doing could qualify as a bed and breakfast if they live on the property, and if they don't, it could qualify as an inn. And that eliminates their worry and their fear. Now, admittedly, it is not allowed in every single zoning district. It may or may not apply to them, but it may. And it's, my thought was just to bring that as an option. What do people think about that?
Mike, I'm wondering if they're going to take it when they see planning board again. Are they going to think they have to do everything else and go to the planning board? Is there verbiage that we can put in that would say?
Well, yeah.
I don't know what the word
That's
would
why I
be.
said may involve planning board review prior to approval. But I wanted to point out that remain with the land, and, you know, obviously you and I know what that means. And
I do like that, yeah.
maybe we say remain with the land and do not require renewal.
Renewal, but we have, don't forget, inspection. That's the thing.
Well, that's I mean, that's a fire inspection for any public building. So it's not a renewal of the permit. It's just a inspection. You got any advice, Mary Lou?
I think it's a little unusual to say other things you can consider in one section of the zoning law. You know, in hotels, we don't say you might want to consider a bed and breakfast instead.
Yeah.
I think it just may be better to leave that out. And when somebody applies, the building inspectors, you know, the building office can say, hey, do you realize you could qualify under this?
Yeah, my only thought is somebody reading it whose only focus is short-term rentals, you know, before they get to the building inspector. I mean, the few people that reached out to me that I sort of showed them that option, they were all ecstatic about it. And I think several of them have already moved towards that direction with Jerry. So I don't know. I'm open either way. I just,
Hey, how
yeah.
about this? How about we put that language on the front page of the application for a short-term rental?
I'm okay with that.
There you
Yeah, I
go.
like that idea.
I'm okay with that.
So do I, and then they can read it and they're not gonna get confused that it
Yep.
has to be both.
If the board doesn't mind, I'm gonna leave it in right now and I'll cut and paste it later into just another document so I don't lose it, the language. But I will take it out. And obviously, any changes we make, I'm gonna have to represent back to you before we vote for public hearing anyway, so. But yeah, no, that's great. That's a very good suggestion. I love that idea. I added in the word, and I skipped over this, the use of short-term transit rentals as home businesses. Because truly this is a home business. It is a business. They are charging a fee. They are raising a rate, they have a rate of rental and they are, so Aaron and I were talking about this and many people seem to not want to think about this as a home business. And I think it's important that people realize it is. So,
Hey, Mike, I would just say too that, in sifting through the public and really insightful, it's not even a maybe, is it a home business? I mean, words were commonly used as income, family business, my personal resource, unable to afford without it. They used other words that are business orientated, like service. I provide services, value, and pride of ownership. We have to make it very clear that there is no doubt that this is a home-based business, that they've taken a residential use and even for a short period of time have turned it.
you froze up, Adam. You're back now. You froze up there for a second.
It only figures.
I think your point is made though, so I'm gonna leave that in unless anybody, and if anybody wants, as we're going through, this is not just about my changes. If anybody else, we go past a section that anybody wants to talk about, please pipe in. It's just I just sort of made some notes for myself and I said I might as well make them in the code so everybody can see them. The authorization is standard. I mean, we're authorizing the code enforcement officer to issue permits. The zoning, those are the districts that we have decided should have it. And we're saying it's a single family or two family. You can't do it in a multifamily. The density, if they're gonna build a particular unit just for short-term rentals on an existing property, they have to meet density and setback requirements unless it's a pre-existing non-conforming structure. Like there are many homes in our town that are pre-existing non-conforming structures. Prohibitions, multifamily dwelling, commercial or industrial purposes. And then the vacant parcel thing is that you can't have an accessory use unless you have a main use on the property. So a vacant lot can't just have a short-term rental. It's got to have a residential structure on it before, because we're calling this an accessory use. I added the definition of access. I can't believe I didn't have it in there in the first place. It's the same definition that we have in the rest of the zoning code in the definition section, but this sort of pulls attention to the fact that it's an important definition. Accessory dwelling unit. I believe I took this definition from Gardner. I looked really hard at what Woodstock, Marbletown, and Gardner were doing. They were three laws that the county had recommended that I look at when I asked the county how many towns had adopted laws. And they gave me a list of about 9 or 10. And then they gave me a list of several that are in process of working on it. And so I think the accessory dwelling unit is important to define. I just had to fix the numbers in the existing short-term transit rental because as we've added sections, it was no longer H. And they just have to meet the criteria of O, P, and Q. Now I added primary and non-primary. Let me scroll up where you can see both. This is taken, I think, from Marbletown. Now what Marbletown does is they say you can have two. You can have a primary residence and you can have a non-primary residence. But you can only have two short-term rentals. And that kind of goes along with what we were saying. We were saying you can't have more than two short-term rental properties. You could have multiple short-term rentals on one parcel and it's still only going to count as one. But so I put these in just as a discussion item to see what people thought. It goes with the two that we had. I think it fits what many people said, where they said, hey, I live in one home, I own this other home that I eventually want to give to my kids. So the one you live in is your primary, the one you don't live in is your non-primary. But, you know, the question is then, do you really need to own 3 or 4 or 5 properties for short-term rentals? And that's a question I'm throwing out to the board of what they think about it. Chris or Aaron, do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I have some thought. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I actually had sent some sample text from the Woodstock law about this part that you were just talking about, but later on.
Yeah.
And I was kind of thinking, and maybe we can talk about this later on, but you know, when we initially introduced the idea of setting like an actual cap to the number of permits, we hadn't set a cap to the number of permits an individual could have.
Right.
And one of the things I noticed that was in common with the other laws in the county was that they did the sets, you know, people could have 1 or 2 basically permits as themselves, but then the cap itself was not set in the law. And it used conditional language. So I wanted to bring that up as a discussion topic. If we go the route of limiting it to say 2 per person, that maybe the idea of setting a cap right now could be something that we would just put in the law. We could say that we could set a cap.
Well, when we get further along, and I chatted briefly with Adam about this, one thing I'm going to propose is that, let's just say if this law gets adopted and you know, in July or August, that it goes into effect September. So from September to December, we only deal with the grandfathered ones. So if you're existing and running from September to December, come in, sign up, get your inspection. If you're up and running, then starting January 1, we would deal with new ones. And that what I'm going to propose is that our organizational meeting, we set a cap, because then we'll have a feel for how many are grandfathered in and we'll know the total number. But then the cap is only then affecting the new ones, not any grandfathered ones. It's just an idea. The other thing I had is under primary residence, putting in exception if that secondary residence, if it's a relative who's living in that secondary residence, as opposed to you just own another house.
Yeah, I really like that sentence, Mike, because some of the concerns I've heard from phone calls is that their kids won't be able to afford to live here.
Right.
So that helps families, you know, at least have some homes in our town.
So the exception is saying, in that case, we're going to call it a second primary residence for you. And I know it's a little odd, but they have to provide proof to us. We're not just going to take their word, oh, grandma lives there, or my daughter lives there. And I tried to cover all the possibilities: son, stepson, father, grandfather, daughter. I didn't want to get into, brother, sister, that kind of thing. But this is all direct lineage from grandfather down to, I guess we could add great grandfather and great grandmother, which is a possibility, but what do people think about that?
Could you just say family member? You could have an aunt. Maybe your mom and dad are gone and you have an aunt. I don't know.
We could, and what I didn't want to do is, you could get it, if you get it too far extended, it kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. I understand what you're saying, B, and maybe I overthought it. I don't know.
Is there a legal family term like extended? Would that be too much, extended family?
Any thoughts, Mary Lou?
There's different terms for different parts of law.
Well, I can leave it as a placeholder for now and people can think about it. I
Let's
mean,
think
this is the
about it.
first time seeing this. But, I heard what you heard, Chris. A lot of people were like, my son lives in that other house or my daughter lives in that other house. So if you're going to Airbnb it, if you're, and you have to be the owner of it. We probably need to add that in.
I guess my question is, if you have a family member living in there, are they there full-time and you're sharing it as an Airbnb, or is it total that they're there always?
Well, that's why I'm saying usually live on a full-time or part-time basis. I know usually is hard to define, but there are a lot of places within the zoning code where, usual means it's the norm. It's not like they're there a month out of the year and 11 months out of the year. It was just an idea of how to accomplish what we heard as people's concerns, and I was trying to accommodate them, and maybe there's a more elegant way we can do it, but
I kind of hear you saying is that somewhat, that it's, unless you provide proof that this home is also a primary residence for someone else. So
right.
I think maybe that's maybe a little simpler, because otherwise Jerry's gonna have to be like checking
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, to give a blood sample and go through a
Well,
a swab.
DNA test. Yeah.
Ancestry.com.
Right, if they're a direct ancestor or descendant on ancestry.com.
yeah. I mean, Aaron, it kind of goes back. We used to have a law in town that was called a mother-daughter apartment, and it was allowed to be utilized, without increasing density. And the problem is, either it was like a younger family member who would leave and go to college, and then it would become just a straight rental. This was pre-short-term rentals. Or it would be an elderly person who maybe passed away or went into an assisted living facility, and then it would become a rental. And there was no oversight of it. So with this, at least with the application, I mean, I think it would need to say that this needs to also be owned by the person. Well, it has to be owned by the person applying. So
all I'm saying is
maybe I overthought it. I was trying to give a little consideration.
what I was suggesting is if the board likes this idea, we just take out the family reference and say that a person may only have one primary residence in the town of Rochester at any given time, unless they provide proof that the additional domicile is a primary residence for, another person, where they live full-time or at a part-time basis. And then I'm just suggesting we take the whole family thing out.
As opposed to rental, Aaron?
Yeah.
Even a friend?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking, I think
How about if we do it the way I just did it? I mean, it should be easy to prove that somebody is your son or your father or your grandfather. Adam has raised his hand. Thank you, Adam.
I didn't want to talk over anybody. I'm enjoying the discussion. I didn't hear this as much as you guys did, and I think that's the nice thing about having the board listen, the public comment. But I almost feel like I'm hearing this for the first time. But my initial reaction is Instead of looking for a workaround, why doesn't the applicant gift the house to the child? And then the child can become the primary owner and do whatever they want with it under the law. Why do we have to modify the code in such a way that would open it up to, all I keep thinking is, these are my 10 kids. I adopted these 10 people, or, I can go down the lineage of people, and all of a sudden, I have 30 rental units. Why don't we say, well, go ahead and gift it if that's what it's there for. Go ahead.
That's a good point, Adam.
Yeah, see what this would do is potentially allow somebody to have 3 properties, because they would have 2 primary residences, and then they could also have 1 non-primary.
What if they had 9 kids?
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna say, we talked about vegetables at my house before the meeting, and there were
Yeah.
7 kids.
What's the board feel like? Is it just too, we take it out for now and we can think about it? We can always add different language back in.
Oh, and if we think that maybe we need to be more generous in some other way to allow more people, I don't know. I think there might be other ways to.
Okay. The magic of delete. We're calling short-term rentals, but we didn't define rental. So I found a definition from land use about rental, definition of a rental. Actually, it should be a capital A. Now this was, I think, from Gardner. They had a rented in part. And what that means is simultaneously, while the owner is there, they're renting it out as a short-term rental. I don't know if it really needs to be in here. It just was intriguing to me. I don't think our code really has any differentiation, whether they're there or not there. It's still there. So it may be not needed.
Right. We don't want to have a definition in here if that
That we don't,
phrase is
we
not
don't use, and
used
we don't use it
elsewhere.
in the code. I just put
Right.
it in as a bit of a placeholder because I was like, this is something maybe we could talk about, but I don't, because we do have people who do that kind of short-term rental. So, Aaron.
So I'm raising my hand on this because I think that where we see these delineations in the definitions is where there's a sort of progressive approach to the short-term rental law. So for example, if we didn't want to put if we wanted to put like a much higher cap in January on the rented in part short-term rentals, say we allow like lots and lots of those, or we don't put a cap
Or
on
no
them,
cap.
and then we put a cap on others, that's where that would come into play. So I think you should keep it as a placeholder because we might, decide that that's where kind of how we want to see it, like a rented in part is not capped at all, and you just have to apply and get a permit. A non-primary residence rental is the one that might have a cap. And, that I'm just saying there would be a progression there.
Adam?
Accidentally raised my hand. No comment.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I sort of feel like the people that are living in their home and are just sort of renting out a room, I mean, that's almost what was the term in the old days? A single room SRO, single room occupancy. So it's kind of a non-issue. I mean, yes, we care about the health and safety issues, but it's not taking away housing. It's the person is there in-house. It's almost like a bed and breakfast situation. So I don't know. There was a part of me that sort of wanted to recognize that this type of use is different, but I don't know how to incorporate it into the code.
Well, I would say that in another way of saying it is like that is the type of use that maybe has the least impact and therefore should maybe have the very, very least amount of regulation.
Well, in that case
I
too,
would-
when the host is in present, I mean, clearly the possibilities of the abuses and the nuisances are lessened because the host is there to kind of monitor.
So
But I don't, I'm almost, to the point that could maybe say that these people don't even need a permit, but how does that monitored?
That was gonna be my question. How are you gonna
Yeah,
monitor
I don't know.
when
I
the,
don't
when
know.
the owner's there and when your friend
Yeah.
is there or
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
rent?
exactly. And I don't know the answer to that. And you know, because a couple people I talked to said this is how they operate. And you know, these are the people that charge $50 and $60 a night, and they're just trying to make a little bit of extra money 5, 6 times a month, 8 times a month, whatever it is that they rent. You know, maybe in the summer they rent out every weekend, and in other times they rent out a couple days a month. It's
Yeah, I felt similar to Aaron, that it needs minimal regulation because it's almost like having a roommate who's chipping
Exactly.
in.
What's our definition of boarding house?
I don't think we have one anymore because we don't really have any.
Because wouldn't that be what this could be?
It's a good point. Aaron, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I think what I was suggesting is it still be a short-term rental that's regulated by this law, but that so I think people should still, you know, have to get a permit and get an inspection, but that we should, if this is the one that we feel we like has the big, like a, you know, in terms of people being able to afford their homes and have a lesser impact, then we should, I was just suggesting like maybe no cap on this one, or, you know, ideas to have it be
Yeah.
less regulated. But I think, you know, having it be a short-term transit rental under this law is fine. Just thinking of ways to, like, before we were talking about a cap of like total of everything.
Right.
And I have like one of the application from Marbletown, if maybe we wanted to look at that later. They
Sure.
have this whole little checkbox thing that allows people to show what type of rental they're registering. And maybe we
Okay.
could, in terms of the application process, we could sort of take care of that. those
Incorporate that into it. I'm gonna leave it for now. I mean, then the other definition was called rental and whole that apparently I didn't copy and put in. And that's where, you know, you are renting the whole house. So,
I just want to comment that the question about the boarding house and saying this is almost like a roommate situation. Remember, these are short term. A typical boarding house would, you know, you may rent for the summer. A lot of people used to rent a boarding house for the summer, so for 3 months. A roommate is there more than a few days.
true.
The boarding house I had in mind was one that I grew up across the road from, and she had people that would come and go. They didn't stay. It wasn't so much like the summer. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Technically, it starts falling more into a bed and breakfast. So if it's owner occupied, room rental by the night or short term.
Right.
You know, my personal feeling is just like Aaron was saying, more lightly regulated, maybe even addressing lower standards to have one registered, or you know, a lower cost. You know, but again, how do you regulate it? Maybe, you know, I don't know.
You don't,
Question.
unless Jerry's gonna go
Sure.
knock on doors all the time. So,
So it might just be another.
yeah, I'm
victim
gonna
versus
leave the
fault.
definition in here for the moment because I like kind of where Aaron was heading in the cap, and maybe we can, when we get to that section, we can rethink it. I also added just a placeholder for rental and whole as the counterpart. So that's pretty much it. I added unit, just because it's a dwelling unit. I added a clarification, so they attain a valid permit. The permit is good for 2 years, but you have to do an annual inspection. So I wanted to be clear that the permit is a 2-year permit, subject to annual fire and safety inspection. So you got to renew your permit every 2 years, but you have to submit to an inspection. Now this ownership of properties, this is where I copied Marbletown's idea, 1 primary and 1 non-primary. it's just a continuation of what we said earlier, that you can't hold permits for greater than 2 properties at any given time. But within any one property, if you had 3 cottages and each one was its own rental, then each one would be its own permit. But it's still only counted as one property. Now,
What are
People
similar
feel about the
individuals?
one primary and one non-primary, or if we just say you can own 2 and just leave it at that, and or if we should change that number.
You're on mute.
I heard Mary Lou's question. Similar individuals. No owner entity composed of similar
What are
individuals.
similar individuals?
Good
Twins.
question. I don't know where, this clearly came from somewhere.
Right.
Oh, no owner entity. So I guess what it's trying to say is you can't create 6 different LLCs and say it's 6 different owners. It's kind of what it's trying to say. So if you have this LLC for this property and this LLC for this property and this LLC for this property, you could go back and go, well, it's 3 different ownerships. That's what it's trying to say. It's clearly not saying it very well.
Yeah, let's put that in as a, I don't know.
I have the
An
language.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I have the language from the Woodstock/Marveltown law, which is like the same.
Yeah,
It
pretty much
says
the
that
same.
only the property owner is permitted to register an STR. An individual property owner can register or have an interest in one non-owner occupied STR. Oh, so sorry. Registration by a corporation whose owners have an interest in more than one STR is prohibited. So that was what I was trying to read,
Okay.
is that have an interest. So they're trying to say
Have an
like,
interest. Yeah, no.
Well, we would have to say more than 2 if we're going to allow 2.
right, yeah. We'd have to adjust it.
Yeah, I
for-
think Woodstock doesn't allow LLCs at all, though.
Oh, I think they do. I
Do
think,
they?
yeah. I was just remembered that they address that and they just say the interest part, which I thought was, I just,
Yeah.
that was the word, is
Yeah,
interest.
interest is that's what we mean. Then an owner. Okay.
My question is this, if you allow an LLC or a corporation, and I understand a person can be that, how does that differ from someone who's just trying to take their property and make money from it as opposed to a corporation? I guess that's a legal question. I'm not quite clear how that works. Mary Lou?
Ask the question again, B.
Okay.
I mean, they're different. So far as liabilities are concerned, so far as taxation is concerned, they're a little bit different.
I know, but if we're allowing corporations to take,
We're actually not allowing
We're not. We're
corporations.
allowing
We're allowing
LLCs.
well, that I know,
Which have-
limited liability.
Which have members, who, they're individuals you can
That's
identify.
a business owning a business. This, I thought, was like a resident running a business. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think I understand your question. So we're saying you can set up an LLC and individuals can set up LLCs. And in fact, it's a very common practice for property owners to register their property in an LLC. But what we're trying to say is when you do that, it's not as transparent. So someone would could set up 6 different LLCs and then get all these different permits. So we're just trying to find a way of saying that that's not allowed. That like, if you have an interest with other people in another LLC, so this no owner entity composed of similar individuals, it's saying like, you can't be a part of like another LLC in more than 2 properties. So it's just
I mean,
You're muted.
it could just say no individual may hold permits for greater than 2 properties at any given time. But an LLC could be a group of people.
Right. And
That's really the goal. The goal is.
I
so-
know.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I did have somebody.
let me
Mary
think about this language.
Lou, I
Um,
did have somebody tell me verbally, who is a financial person, that there really is no difference between an LLC and a corporation. I said I had a difference of opinion on that, and I know you do too, but they tried to tell me that there really is no difference, that an LLC is a corporation.
Well, it's
It's a limited
regulated
liability
under New
corporation.
York State Corporations law.
Yeah,
But there are differences. Otherwise, we wouldn't have 2 different organizations, would we?
yeah. Because what
Mike,
we're trying to avoid is somebody, becomes a corporation, with a board of directors. And I mean, this is an unrealistic example, but say Marriott Properties decides to come in and buy 20 houses in the town of Rochester. It's an extreme example, I know. But comes in and buys 20 houses and is gonna short-term rental all 20 of them. That's what we're trying to stop, but we understand that an individual, for insurance and liability protection, may not want to own it, something that's a rental, as an individual, because then if there's an accident, it falls back on them personally. B, you had your hand raised.
Yeah. Doesn't an LLC have to have a board of directors, a secretary? They don't? I don't know. I'm asking that question.
They,
I could-
they
Okay,
don't
and they
have-
don't have to take minutes, or they don't have to show anything like that. Okay.
So a good example would be is I could go out today and for $500 form Adam Paddock LLC, which I probably should, and put all my little business entities from lawn mowing to, anything else I do under that, because if I mess up something, then only the corporation could be held liable in court. Adam Paddock, the person, they can't come after my stocks. They can't come after my personal home. That's why it's called a limited liability corporation. You're right. It does open up a little can of worms, because, I could open up Adam Paddock LLC, Adam S. Paddock LLC, Adam Paddock III LLC. But if we just simply say that only one person can hold a permit at a time, regardless if it's an LLC or not. If Adam Paddock LLC is the holder, but it's Adam Paddock the person, Adam Paddock can only have 2 maximum rentals in the town of Rochester. Now, what that doesn't stop, and what none of this stops, and it just kind of popped in my head, is Jamie Paddock from owning a rental, Madison Paddock from owning 2 rentals, Eric Paddock from owning 2 rentals, all
Exactly.
while Adam Paddock pays for it. And none of the things that we've done so far have stopped that.
Yeah,
Maybe I shouldn't have brought it up, because maybe I was the first one to think of it.
And just so you know, Adam, if you form Adam Paddock LLC, it doesn't absolve you of all personal liability.
Not all, but enough.
If you're out there mowing the lawn, you're still personally liable.
well, let's mull that one over and
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Chris, I'm sorry, Chris, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so this is a great point, and I'm glad it has come up, because I could start an LLC called 73 Sages Loop. I could start one called 22 Route 209. My LLC can have any name I want. So then it'll be difficult to see who actually owns it. So if it's an LLC, we might need to ask who the principal owner is.
yes.
Then we'll see the repetition. Otherwise, we won't see it in the LLC names.
So we need to add a section that if the
Maybe on the application, Mike.
yeah, if it's a general partner, well, we can add it in here, a general partnership, limited liability, must provide, should we
Names
say
of the
must provide
members or
names of
partners.
all owners? Not
Yeah,
just,
yeah, of members and partners is what you'd have. I have a question for you as I mull this over. Where in old 2, which just turned into 3, where it says no owner entity, do we mean no owner or no entity owned by an owner? Or can you own one individually, but no more than 2 LLCs?
yeah,
That's
I
not
thi-
clear to me if 1 and
no,
2
I'm
are
not sure it is
financed-
either. And I'm not sure that I wrote this. I think it came from somewhere else. So I think what I think I'm understanding is it's saying that we don't want any one individual to be a part of more than two properties.
Okay, thank you.
So, whether you are an individual, say you're an individual and you're part of this other partnership that owns another one.
Yep.
That's your two. So, but I think by
I'll try-
saying a
I'll try
general
and come up with
partnership,
some language.
yeah. Must disclose all
The
partners.
names of all
Names.
partners and or members.
When applying.
Yeah, we'll have to just put a space on the application for it.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it's there on Marble Towns. I looked at Marble Towns also.
No, I don't think it is. We may be one of the first that is kind of asking this, and I think it's good if we ask for it, because then they have, they have to be a little, now I know things can change hands, but when it change, if one partner changes and it's still the same LLC, it's not a new LLC, it's just, but they would disclose that on the renewal.
Mike, I got a question. Yeah, I got a question for you. What if somebody sells their LLC? Because the whole purpose of this is not to have the
Right.
designation travel.
I think we've covered that if it's sold, or if they sell their LLC, then it is the same
LLC.
name. Yeah,
Now it's still doing business as the same entity. The entity hasn't changed. The owner of the entity has.
we probably need to put sorry, there's a fly flying around here in front of me. That's why I'm waving at the
Oh, you were
screen
dismissing
like
Yeah,
that.
that.
I'm glad you brought that up.
you can put, all right, so we have general partnership, limited liability partnership, or limited liability company must disclose names of all partners and all members when applying. I would put, and
Well, we do have
shall-
somewhere that it may not be resold. We can probably cover it there where it may not be
Oh, okay.
sold.
How
Yeah,
about,
oh, okay, so that will cover it if we have
yeah.
that.
How do people feel about this? One primary, one non-primary? Should we just leave it at two, and because we kind of took out the other part there?
Yeah, I think it's a great start. And if we ever have to go and revisit it, in the future.
Let me leave it there for now, because Mary Lou's going to rework that whole piece anyway for us. So this is a work in progress. This is, we're on version 4.
Mike, I was gonna say, if to the membership when applying, any changes, if there are any changes, you must notify the building department.
Yep. Any changes to the partners or members, or any changes in partners or members
Yeah.
shall be immediately provided to the
Within
building
30 days.
department.
Or we should say like within 30 days or something.
Shall be recorded in the building department?
Now, just recorded
Provided?
assumes we're
Okay.
doing
Yeah,
Provided to,
fancy thing with it.
to it's actually code enforcement.
Okay.
Sorry. $30 days of change. Okay, I'm gonna leave the next one. So it just used to be further down. it was in the application section. It just made sense to be in the ownership of property section. It seemed like it made more sense there to me, and so I moved it up there. It used to be much further down in the code, or was it earlier in the code? I don't remember. No, it was further in the code. So the grandfathering, we had originally set it as April 1st. I'm putting in September 1st with the idea that this is adopted at September 1st. I was putting in an actual date rather than at the adoption of this local law to be really specific to people so they understand. If we change the adoption date, then that date would change. So what we're saying is, and Adam, you may want to speak to this based on the conversation you had last night.
No, Mike, I appreciate it. And the public comment has been absolutely spectacular. I mean, again, this is, really, the way a law should be crafted. But I had a really great conversation with Henry Hershkowitz. And as we kind of went back and forth, we started talking about the grandfathering. And what it really made me realize is that we don't have an understanding. We're simply, stabbing in the dark to see how many we have. So my suggestion would be is that if the date comes to fruition that September 1st is the grandfather date, that we give the folks that have current rentals until the end of the year, until December 31st, to become compliant with the regulations through the county. And if they do, what they got going on, as long as it's safe, as long as it's as long as it meets the other guidelines, would be acceptable. And that would mean that if you have 3 instead of 2, or if you'd still have to have safety and things like that. But at that point also, we'd have an understanding of how many we have. My concern after talking to so many people and receiving so many letters is that we don't understand how many short-term rentals we have. And if we give this opportunity, almost an amnesty period for people to get compliant, we'll have a true understanding of what it is. Now, with the understanding that once these, over time, they go away, the non-compliant ones will diminish. And then, at the first of the year, we'll have a much better opportunity to see how many more we want to add going into the new year. But to just continuously guess and to punish the people that have them, that have been compliant by whatever laws are there, I just don't think is the right thing. So it's a proposal I'd like to make.
That'll also, Adam, give the code enforcement department time to get the permits and get the inspections done.
Still a lot of work, but yeah.
Right. Aaron, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we had kind of brainstormed this idea of like a while back too, where we were like.
I want to go back real quick. I think we did a definition of grandfathering. No, we didn't.
We didn't.
It was right where you're at. No? Right. Sorry. Keep going down.
The other thing I wanted to say is that because we haven't been.
No, we didn't.
Because we haven't been enforcing, or, because we've been allowing this use, I think we need to.
What?
Because we haven't been, because people have, I'm agreeing. I think that
You're saying because people have been doing it, we want, so I think we should add a sentence before this to qualify. We need to say what grandfathering is. So the town board or the town of Rochester will recognize, thank you.
I finally got one of these language ones in here. Good for me.
Existing STR units operating prior to January. Why don't we say December, since we're saying December for the other. 1/2021 to qualify for grandfathering of existing use, a property owner shall provide in Ulster County dated prior to December 1st, 2021. One of the things too that Adam and I talked after he spoke with Henry said he was in, and I apologize for using his name, but he did, speak directly to both of us. He was unclear how to get the license, the registration, and he is doing an Airbnb, and he was under the impression that he was paying it into it. And the problem is somewhat that Airbnb has a contract with the county, and they do provide a monthly check to the county, but there is no reconciliation or auditing of any kind or documentation of any kind provided with that check. It's just a check. It's probably not even a check. It's probably a direct deposit, but they don't say who's renting, where, what town, what address, how many nights. So the county on their website has a whole pamphlet that I think we should probably either put the link on the application or maybe even print out the form and have them to give from the code enforcement officer of how people go to sign up, because the county wants people to sign up with even if they're signed up with Airbnb through that platform, they want them to sign up with the county anyway, and then still provide their number of nights rentals. They're not expecting money to change hands because they recognize that Airbnb is paying the money, but the county still wants some semblance of information as to number of nights and how that operates. So Aaron, you had your hand up first, then took it down, so.
It goes away on its own. I don't know. It just goes away. What I was going to say was, once we get this count, would we be referring to this in the initial stages as grandfathering?
I'm trying to.
And what I'm thinking is, as we compile our records, because I'm wondering if people are going to want to register with the county and register with Airbnb when they turn their money to Airbnb and Airbnb sends in their check or whatever they do for X amount of things. Maybe it would behoove us to gather our information and turn it into the county.
Well, the county registration is a mandatory thing if we adopt the law. Because we signed that shared services agreement where the county provides us with that data set. One of the requirements in that contract is, and Mary Lou can advise us how binding it is, but is that if we adopt the short-term rental law, that we put in a mandatory signing up with the county. So that piece we have to do because of that agreement we have. My thought is that this initial grandfathering period is from the date the law takes effect to January 1, 2022, or December 31, 2021. So if in theory it's September, October, November, December. There's 4 months. That's the time frame that we're not going to accept new. My thought is, as you get further down, we're not going to accept any brand new applications. In that 4 months, we're only accepting applications from people who are up and running right now, or who start operating in that period of time. And those are the ones that are grandfathered in. And then starting January 1, 2022 is where we consider everybody beyond that point a new one, because you had your 4-month window of time to say to us, hey, I'm operating, and show your proof that you're operating and get in under the grandfathering. And once you get the grandfathering, you will always get a permit as long as you meet the inspection. You will always get a permit. If you fail your inspection, then you won't get a permit until your inspection is compliant. But
how would a house or a place, residence in progress, that just finishes up and doesn't quite make the cutoff? I mean, that's going to happen too.
Yeah.
How would we had that a person call in with just that.
Yeah.
I mean, how are we dealing with that?
Mary Lou, would that be something, and it's just a thought, would that be something that could be a variance? It wouldn't be a use variance, it would have to be an area variance because it essentially is a number. You were, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
I don't know how it would be an area variance. Mike.
Yeah, it's not a use variance, so it probably wouldn't be a variance then. We could put in an appeal process, B, that people could appeal to the town board and the town
For a
board
waiver.
for a waiver.
Well, that's what I'm wondering because
Yeah.
of just such the conversation that we had the
They
one
would have
night
to
we
show
had.
us that they were under construction
They're
at.
all
certain
under
point of period.
construction and
Yeah,
it would create a hardship.
Yeah,
The town board could grant a waiver.
For this one-time grandfathering though, I don't want to, 3
Yeah.
years from now, somebody said, I built a house to be an Airbnb and I didn't get a
Right,
permit.
well, but
Well, yeah, I
then
don't want
then
it
it's
to.
not then it's not a hardship. It's somebody who didn't read the law first. In this case, if somebody started it prior to the passage of the law, that's depending how far along they are also.
2 for 2, Adam. I like that language, the one-time grandfathering.
Wow. I'm on a roll tonight. I'm good for one good idea a month and you got 2, so.
We probably should we
Don't
say
expect much out of
January
me
1,
before.
2022? Or actually December 31? So
Well-
that's the end of the year. Or should we say December 1?
We're giving this like 4-month application window, so I think if we give it till December 31, then that's,
That's the 4 month. September, October, November, December.
We're hoping that Jerry can get all these done too, right?
Well,
and that
this
will.
is, this is just the application. If Jerry has to do some of the inspections in the first week of January or so, or the second week of January, this is just the application process. Once you register, once you apply, you're in the queue for grandfathering once your inspection gets done.
You're saying your application has to be date stamped by December 31st, just like when you mail in your taxes, it has to be
Correct.
date stamped April 15th.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Chris and then Aaron.
I think Aaron was first.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Aaron and then Chris.
Okay, so the thing that I wanted to say about this section is just that, especially adding this new sentence, I would like to make it more clear, especially in section D, that this is subject to you like qualifying for the type of property and the type of unit that we're saying. So like, we're not grandfathering in people that are using alternative structures, and we're not, that's all I wanted to say, is that that first sentence kind of makes it sound like, oh, if you're running it, you'll just get to have it no matter what. But what we're
So,
saying,
I
yeah.
think we gotta go say which comply. Well, we're saying though, a short-term transit rental has to be a single family. Let's look at definition of short-term existing. Here we go. As defined herein, which is in operation. We're gonna have to change this though, as of December 31. So we're saying it has to meet this criteria, Aaron, to be a short-term rental. OP and Q are, let me just scan down to where OP and Q are. Oh, that's the process. So it probably shouldn't say OP and Q.
Yeah, that's probably from a while, from
Yeah.
like number 1.
Well, O is the application, P is the inspection, and Q is the application review. So we are saying they have to comply with those things, that they have to follow those things, but I see where you're both going. Maybe we should just
Would
say
it-
as defined in,
Yeah, that's all, like, that's all I meant is add like a couple of words.
yeah, as defined in section C of this code.
Yeah. I just wanted to set, I know we're trying to make I know we're trying to make this like clear. So I just thought we should add a couple words to make it clear that,
How about we say this?
Can I try and go 3 for 3? That the grandfathering would be contingent on QP and OP and Q.
Well, so we say an existing short-term transit rental, so let's look at short-term transit rental. Of any, I think I may have it for you instead, Adam. Residential use, single-family and two-family dwelling unit or part of a, how's that sound?
put that or part of in front, like the rental or lease of any or part of any single family and two family.
I've got a question for you.
Yep,
You have 30 days or less. Do you mean less than 30 days? Because the tenancy is generally 30 days is considered a
oh,
regular tenancy.
yeah, I've seen some of the short-term rental codes say less than 31 days. Some say 30 days or less.
Okay, all right.
It's essentially meant to be 1 month, but if it's a 31-day month, I think,
No, I thought you might mean less than 30 days because a lot of times for,
yeah.
if you're somewhere 30 days, you might have to be evicted.
Well, and I know that from all my years of traveling with Radio City, that when we stayed in a motel on day 30, no, actually it was day 31. On day 31, you stop paying the
Right,
bed
the tax. Yeah, the bed tax.
Yeah,
But
it was on day 31, but it depended on the state probably,
yeah,
but most I've seen have been 30 days or less, but I have
Okay.
seen some say less than 31 days.
all right. You haven't seen any that say less than 30 though.
I haven't,
Okay.
but it doesn't mean they don't exist.
I'm gonna just double check under landlord tenant law to make sure
Yep,
that somebody
please do.
doesn't become a tenant on day 30.
Yeah. So we could add that into the existing short-term rental too, well, we say a short-term transit rental is defined herein. So that covers it. Chris?
I was just thinking, maybe you can explain this a little, Mike. It just feels like the grandfathering is very exclusive, and it's making it almost sound to the public right now like the future will be very difficult to do an Airbnb, and this is going to be very difficult for me as someone who's taken my Airbnb down after years of having super status or whatever. And having a book also, like all the residents that we've heard from, that recommends all of our local businesses for our tenants to shop in. But now I don't have an Airbnb in order to represent our constituents. So I won't get grandfathered. What does that mean for me? And like, what
It
does it
is a
mean
valid
to
point.
build a new house now? Go ahead.
No, it is a valid point. If we write that waiver section, we could maybe put in the waiver that you could get a waiver for previous use within a certain number of years. I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas. I think to Adam's point is with this grandfather, we really don't know how many we have. We think we know. The county has a number. We can all look at the at the listing numbers and see, but we really don't know. And some people may opt not to do it. So I
And I'm
think
not
Adam's
bringing-
point is that with this grandfathering, we're gonna have a baseline come January 1 and know how many really exist.
I'm not bringing it up to be selfish or.
No, and it's a valid
Um,
point
like,
because you may
what
have
unique-
somebody who's not. Now, I will say on the county list, though, there are many where, in the listing, there's a check mark that they haven't advertised in a year or more, but they're still on the county list and they're still registered.
That's cool. I just wanted to bring it up because of its unique aspect.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Um,
And I'm sorry, my personal thought, and again, it's only mine, is that, once we get this part one done with the grandfathering and say it comes back with 125 units, and, we played with numbers like 2% or, 150, to me, that would mean that, come January 1st or in our organizational meeting, we'd say, and we're allowing an additional 25 permits this year. The following year goes by, and there's a very high demand where people want more, or, there's a change in the town, and 12 come off, but we want to add 10 more. So this time, in 2023, there's 23 available. And you get on the waiting list.
Actually, Chris, reading this the way it's written is providing proof of operation prior to September 1, 2021. Doesn't say how far prior. So if you could provide proof and you were registered, even if you were registered with the county and you got no activity, you would have, the way this is defined, you would comply with the grandfathering.
Okay, great. And then B, I just wanted to let you know your hand disappears because you're hitting applause.
Well, that's because that's what they give me. I've got two choices. You want, I can do a thumbs up.
Okay.
I have a lower hand one now, like, oh, you don't have that one.
Yeah,
So
it's okay.
I have a question for Mary Lou, because I kind of hear Chris's point, and I think it's not just about, Councilman Hewitt and his situation, but this idea that we came up with, I kind of felt the way I was interpreting it is that it had more to do with rolling out the law in phases so that we could make better informed decisions, not so much about the sanctity of people who are running the rental units now. So I wonder if maybe if we kind of think of it more like that, this is the phase one is getting the people that are currently running them to have a period where they can apply for permits. Then we know how many we have in town. And I think, I don't think we want to make it sound like no one's going to ever be able to get a permit ever again after that. So that was the only point I was making, is that it's more about phases, I think.
Well, B, you had your hand up, so let's let you go first.
I have my thumb up and now it won't go away. So when I want it to stay, it doesn't matter. Where I was going with this is Aaron sent out 2 emails just before this meeting, and I'm really interested in some training and seeing what's in those a little bit. We can go through with this tonight. I think it's great. But I'm just wondering, maybe all of us could use a little training or see what's required or what was ever in there. It was a seminar, and I'd be interested in seeing what that's about. I like Erin's idea of phases and what she just said.
Right.
We're phasing this in, and we're going to have to adjust it. And just so everyone understands that it's going to be adjusted in the future.
I think though we're kind of doing both, Aaron. We are phasing it in that in the initial 4-month period, we're not accepting new applications. We're only accepting grandfathering applications. So in a way, it's both to me. To me, it's addressing the existing people who are operating, and in essence, the local law, the complete local law is not taking effect until January 1, 2022. the grandfathering period of time. Now, the other aspects of the law, yes, are taking effect.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's just the thought of having a whole waiver process, and I think that, I don't know, I'm kind of feeling like this seems pretty,
I'm not too crazy about the waiver process. I don't know that we need it. Mary Lou, you're really literally.
My
raising
real
your
hand, my real hand. So while I understand Chris's concern, on other things within zoning, if you don't do something for a certain amount of time, you lose your grandfathering and you have to come back and try again. You know, there may be a really good reason that you stopped running your beauty parlor.
What's the period of time for in our code for non-conforming? Is it 3 years?
2, I
Mary-
think.
I think
Might
it's
be one,
three.
it might be two.
five.
I don't know. I thought.
I'm looking it up.
I thought 5.
It used to be 5B. It may have changed.
Yeah, okay.
Because we can just, instead of saying prior to, we can just say between September 21, 2016 and September 1, 2021.
I mean, I think, yeah, because part of what we're trying to do is like everyone, to me, the reason why I brought up the whole idea is there are people that are operating the short-term rentals right now, and for the health and safety of our community and their guests, I think it's very appropriate to prioritize those permits. And then we are able to assess the total. That's all what I was saying. And I think,
As we haven't gotten to the cap yet, and when you see my proposal from the cap, it's kind of exactly what you said.
yeah. And then I just, because B brought it up, I did send everyone, and Mike got this email too, because it's from the Ulster County Planning Board. There's a training in a week. It's a free training on the 23rd. It's by the Tug Hill Commission, which is a New York State commission,
great.
Tug Hill region, with the Hodgins Russ attorneys. And so they're presenting on short-term transient rental laws and the legal issues that have come up for different towns that have implemented them. And so I just sent that out because I thought, hey, I'll go to it. But I think it might be useful. It's for us basically. So that was it.
That's fine. So I'm going to leave it. I mean, we've kicked around a lot of things. I think we should just all sort of mull it over. We're not going to get to a final resolution. I'm going to leave it at this right now. So you provide proof of operation within that 5-year window of time. Should it be December, do we think, only because the other's December? I was saying September because that's when the law would take effect. I'm going to leave it as September. We'll mull
Yeah,
that over.
because again, you don't, again, if you're not compliant between now and September, again, what's preventing anybody from going out and saying,
Well,
let me
we
get
are
grandfathered in real
saying,
quick,
we are going to say though the certificate of authority you have till December. So if you start working on it and you get held up for some reason, we're going to give you a little more leeway, but you still can't apply until you have that. So now this is the non-grandfathered cap of new non-grandfathered STR permits. Cap shall be established on the, and then if you go to the next statement, it will close up. The initial cap shall be established for the year 2022 at the Town Board 2022 organizational meeting. That's our first meeting of the year. We know how many are grandfathered in. We know the number of housing units from the July assessment roll the previous year. So at that organizational meeting, we established the cap for the year, for that year. And then moving forward further, originally I had said September 30th. I was going to relent and say we'd do it by August 1st to let people know better. And then I took out the 1 to 3% to give the town board greater flexibility. So it becomes a year-to-year cap. But remember, the year-to-year cap is on new permits. Now that's a question. We have the grandfather permits, then we have each year we establish a number of new ones. Do those people then continue to get permits until I suspect over time, there will be some attrition. You will get new ones, you will lose old ones. But the fear is if we just keep getting new ones and don't lose as many as we gain, then our total number just keeps growing. The way we can address that though is in the cap. If we have way too many running existing, the following year, our cap may be 10 or maybe 0 for the year.
Mike, it just made me think of something. One of our letters talked about how if we're trying to protect housing and affordability, we may want to address it in a different conversation or law. Remember that? Instead of kind of beating around the point of trying to make housing affordable, address it in a separate conversation at some point. You guys remember that letter?
I'm sorry, Chris, I missed the tail end of that.
Sure. Just like I think at some point we should have a conversation separate from Airbnb about how housing can remain affordable in our town.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
He was right, 5 years. He gets 2 bonus points.
Yep.
Well, I have to keep up with Adam tonight. He's
Adam's still ahead, but you get 2 bonus points.
Why don't we just leave this for the moment for cap and everybody think about it? I mean, we're not publishing this. This is a working document for us. Tonight was just a chance for us to talk through it.
Can I just make one point? This isn't, I'm not
Absolutely.
suggesting an edit. It's just for the rest of the board to think about this idea of the term of the grandfathering, because the permit is a 2-year permit. So if you have to apply every 2 years, even if you're grandfathered in, right? So
Correct.
if someone just didn't apply, that's all we're saying, right? Is like,
If you don't apply, if you don't apply and then you come back 2 years later or even a year later and go, well, I want to apply now. Once you didn't apply, once you didn't renew,
you're new,
grandfathering went away,
right? Okay. That's
in my opinion, and we could clarify that in the code.
that's the only point I was trying to make in
Yeah.
terms of like,
But I think the fear or the question is, so separating the grandfathered ones. So we start a new permit process. Once people get a permit, I feel that they should be guaranteed to continue to get that permit unless they stop operating or they fail and don't pass the inspection.
But are we saying the permit goes with the land, Mike?
No, we're not saying it goes with the land. It goes with the owner, but as long as the same owner continues to own the land and continues to apply, what I'm saying is once they get it, they're guaranteed, they're not subject to the cap again in the future. But
Guaranteed
way-
renewable. as
and I'm
long
kind of
as it's-
saying this out loud because I'm just talking it through. The fear is that the number is going to exponentially grow, but with the cap being a variable every year, the town board can adjust the cap according to the number of units that exist at the end of the previous year. I mean, maybe we say the cap is going to be set at the organizational meeting every year.
and yeah, we can, I think,
You already said that, didn't you?
Well, we're saying for 2022, because we're gonna do the grandfathering from September to December. And then, so for 2022, what I'm saying though, for future years, we're gonna do it at August 1st. So people have an opportunity to know, but maybe it should just be said at the organizational meeting and be one of the resolutions that's done every year.
What my thought was, if you started in January, what are you going to do? In the first year, you're going to have a cap in January and a cap in August?
Well, the cap in August would be the cap for the following year. We're just going to establish it. So the cap shall be established for the following year. So August 1st, 2022, we're going to establish the cap that takes effect January 1, 2023, but it just lets people know what the number is so they can plan ahead of time. The first one, we can't plan ahead of time because we don't know how many are going to register in the grandfathered. So what I was trying to react to is people were saying they wanted advance notice so they could make plans. So the number is established and then it actually takes effect January 1, because the permits run January to December.
Right, yeah, I was just looking that up, is like, did we change that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's at the code enforcement officer's request. They want it to be that way. It's easier for them when it's a single date as opposed to a 12-month period, because then they have a lot of tracking to do for each individual when it actually expires.
So the cap, so yeah, because we have, basically you can apply annually. We had like that, a deadline we had to kind of guarantee.
Well, you're applying every year, you're getting the inspection annually. Every other year, excuse me. You're applying every 2 years. So say you get your permit in January 2022. The next time you reapply is January 2024. But in 2022 and 2023, you have to get the code enforcement officer will send you a letter saying you need to schedule your inspection prior to such and such date. And that's what they already do that for all the other accommodations. They send a letter or an email saying within this window of time, you must schedule your inspection.
Okay, so it kind of makes sense because basically we're going to get this amount of people who are already running short-term rentals, and then they don't have to reapply for 2 years. So we know that number.
Right.
And so the only thing we have to consider in the first year, at least, is the new number.
Right. And we'll know how many come in on the grandfathering.
Yep.
And that's how we establish the next number. After the grandfathering, we figure out, okay, we have this many housing units in the town of Rochester. We've grandfathered this many. Our goal is to have this total percentage. What's subtract one from the other? That's the number of new permits for 2022. For 2023, Mike Dunham, or whoever the next assessor is going to tell us July 1st how many housing units we had at that moment in time. We're going to set the cap in August so people can make plans. So when the new permits come, the new permit window comes due January 1, 2023, they already know what the cap number is going to be. And remember, we're letting people start applying as of October, so to pre-apply. The other alternative is to just set it at the organizational meeting, but then it's just taking effect that day, and it doesn't give anybody any window of time to make preparations. That's my theory anyway. Whether it's any good or not, I don't know.
I think it makes sense. I like the fact that we're saying, here's your timeline. It's not a rush process, but it's a nice cycle that, again, with the 2-year permitting, gives us a chance to reevaluate. Who knows what's going to happen in the town in the next 2, 4, 6 years as far as housing.
And as Mary Lou says, you can always amend the law.
But it gives us flexibility, and I like it. Nice job.
So here's why I did this. The Ulster County tax used to be here after all this cap and grandfathering stuff. It just made sense that it should be further in front. So I just clarified a non-refundable application and inspection fee. The first year fee, the way we have established it right now, is $200. It's $100 for the inspection. It's $100 for the application fee. The following year, it's a $100 inspection fee. Then when you reapply for a new permit, it's $200 again. So, or at least the way we have the numbers right now as we speak. So essentially, it's $300 every 2 years. And that's with the the fees that we adopted at the beginning of 2021 before we had this law, but we knew we were going to consider it, so.
Saying, Mike, that it's 200, 100,
It's
200.
200 for the permit, but the permit includes an inspection.
Right,
Then the following year, you don't need the permit, you just need the inspection, and that's the 100.
yep, 200, 100, 200.
100, unless the town board or future town boards change the fees. But right now, it would be 200, 100, 200. So averaged out over a 2-year period, it's $150 per year, which to me is pretty reasonable based on the numbers we see of what people are getting per night. So I just changed, say, shall be available by the code enforcement office. We're saying it shall be developed by the code enforcement officer. They have to get a separate permit and inspection, just clarifying that just because you file the permit, you still have to get the inspection. I left all this the same. I clarified because many people thought we were asking for a survey. I wanted to clarify. I'm sorry, not survey, the description, the floor plan. They thought they needed to do an engineered floor plan. Maybe approximately to scale sketch plan. Professional plans are not required. It can be as simple as somebody with a piece of graph paper and a tape measure measuring their rooms and drawing it out on graph paper. And if I was going to draw an example of my house and bring it and show it so people would see what we were talking about, and maybe I will at public hearing. We were getting comments that this is going to cost people $500 to $1,000, and I wanted to point out that somebody can do it pretty quickly themselves without any training, with just a little bit of work. Also clarifying, we're not asking for a survey. They can do an aerial map that they can, quite frankly, they can print it from Parcel Viewer. They can print it from Google Earth. Need not be a survey. They may need to do that and then embellish it somewhat slightly but on their own, but saying it's easily obtained free of charge, because the comments we were getting was the delay to get a survey, the time it takes to do a survey. We're not asking for a survey. We just want a visual to see where your house lies in relation to the property lines. I do know that Parcel Viewer, the lines and the picture images do not line up perfectly, but I think we're not looking for a dimensional as much as a correlation to neighboring properties. So I wanted to put that in to clarify, because a lot of the fear seemed to be the cost of all this. I added in, because I'm not sure we had put this in the application process. They have to give a copy of the certificate of authority. And we have this blank page because I added stuff. So the inspection shall be done for the initial permitting and annually thereafter, just clarifying that it's a yearly thing. Initial inspection shall be completed for all grandfathered units prior to January 1, 2022. That may put too much pressure on Jerry. I put that in because there was a fear that one person shared with me that they would get stuck waiting, months and months and months on end. Should we say within a certain number of days of application, or maybe we shouldn't even address it?
I think I would confer with Jerry to see what he felt was fair.
Okay. It used to just say, shall be completed, oh no, for each renewal permit used to be up here. For the initial permitting And for each renewal permit is what used to say here. That's an ad that actually should have gone. I'm gonna mess this up. I knew I was. You know what? I'm gonna leave it out. We'll confer with Jerry anyway, because I don't think it's feasible.
Yeah, because also we're saying you're gonna get your permit.
Right.
So I think a lot of people expressed, well, I'm running this and what if, how long do I
It's
have
gonna
to
be
wait?
grandfathered in.
And we're saying, well, you don't have to really worry that much. So the pressure's a little bit off for those,
Okay.
in a sense, I think.
Yeah. I just added that they must comply with New York State Building Code requirements because that's what the fire inspection is based on, and shall have no open violations. So if you have an open violation on your property that you haven't addressed, we're not gonna let you apply for this until you clear up that pre-existing violation. I think it's, you know, if you aren't addressing current violations, we're not gonna give you this, a new use. So, I'm saying renewal applications shall never be subject to any cap, provided the property remains under the same ownership. So that's what I was saying earlier. Once you get a permit, every time you renew, you are guaranteed to get a renewal as long as you get pass your inspection and you and it's same ownership.
Hey, Mike, can we just clarify that a little bit? I said it a few times tonight. My immediate gut reaction is your septic's not working correctly, so you can't be an Airbnb, and now you have to go back to the end of the line. Do you have a certain amount of time that after failing
Yeah,
inspection, you must become
we
compliant?
do cover that in the inspection. Somewhere we covered it, that you have two tries essentially. So if we go there and you got violations, you can fix your violations, call us up and say, my violations are fixed, come do my second inspection.
Okay.
What we did say
Any
though, is
time frame on that though?
I don't remember if we did.
Okay.
It may be coming up. It's coming up. We haven't gotten to it yet.
Gotcha. Because if somebody takes 2 years to fix their violation,
Yeah,
you
I
can
get
operate.
it.
And
I
at the
get
same
it.
time, if you did have to do something big and couldn't get a contractor, I wouldn't want it to be too short. You know, I just heard that a couple of times tonight, and I was wondering.
It is somewhere. I remember we did say that, and I guess we just haven't gotten there yet. Permit to operate a short-term transit rental in any given year will expire on December 31, except an initial permit approved after September 1st of a calendar year shall be allowed to run through December 31 of the subsequent year. So all we're saying is if you get your permit after September 1st, you don't have to come back 4 months later. You can, well, actually, it's a 2-year permit, so it really doesn't matter.
I think all that's trying to say is if you apply after September, your 2 years starts January.
You're right. Yeah, it is. You're right. It is saying that. Okay. This was one I borrowed from somebody else's code and I don't remember who. The exterior advertising is prohibited. We didn't address that, but what we don't want is a lot of signage and we want it to look residential. How do people feel about that?
Feel like it's necessary? What kind of signage can you imagine?
Somebody could put up a big 4x8 sign on the side of their house, you know, stay here kind of thing, or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I think maybe we have a little bit of language in our home occupancy law for, I think, class C home occupations. You're allowed to have signage, but it has to be.
Class 1, it's got a certain size.
Yeah, there's like a certain size.
Yep.
And it has to be like a certain look, like you were just saying, Mike. So I think we should maybe echo that language.
I'm just putting a note in there for us, so
you're allowed, I've seen people will have like a parking sign or
Yeah.
You know, I've seen little, and that should be allowed.
Yeah, that's allowed. That's not advertising though. See, what
I
we're
thought-
saying is that advertising, you can have safety signs and things like that. But what we didn't want to have is advertising, you know,
Kind of a 180 from where we
It's on a
started with
Rochester.
designating the building so it could be seen from the road. Now we're saying you can't advertise. I can't imagine it would be an issue, but again, you know, for the one person that would tack a 4x8 piece of plywood to the side of their house, we should probably have it in there.
I have in other states, I've seen some, you know, kind of like what Mike's talking about. But I would say I also, since we've been working on this law, I've been more tuned into it. And I have seen some properties that, you know, some people name their rental like Green Hill Cottage, and there'll be like a very small.
yeah,
sign.
that's fine. That's
That-
fine. That's a naming.
Yeah,
We can clarify maybe what the advertising is, and I think if we do it with the size, Aaron, we'll be okay.
Yep.
So, and I apologize. We'll move through here because it's getting a little bit late here. Actually, that's it. Now, Mary Lou, somebody brought up to me about this complaint of a violation. So where was it? The question to me was, does a code enforcement officer have a time frame about a corrective action? So does he
There,
have a time frame?
there is a time frame, and I think it's,
It's in the state code?
yeah,
Okay, so it's already, I told them I thought it was already addressed in
Yeah,
the state
it's
code.
not anything we have to address here.
Yeah, okay. And the other thing they asked is if there was an appeal process for a denial of a permit, and I said, because
The
it's
appeals
in zoning
process would-
code, the ZBA.
Yeah,
appealing the zoning
ZBA,
officer's
it's,
determination.
yep, they'd be
Yeah.
appealing their denial.
And I
Yep,
told her I told them, the people, that it's already in the code, so.
Yep.
They were satisfied with that answer, so. And then the only other thing I said shall become effective September 1st, 2021, and that's just based on us adopting this by some point in August, so. So let me save this so I don't lose it. And I'll stop share. So I guess we all just put our thinking caps on, and we got our workshop meeting in 8 days. So we can talk about it a little more then if we want, and then decide if we want to refer it to the county and the local planning board. And because we made enough changes that I think Mary Lou would probably agree that we probably need to refer it.
yeah.
Yeah, I already knew that answer.
And the thing is, if you have those changes and you refer it at your next meeting, they don't have to look at it. You can beg them, Mike.
Agreed. And if
But
we
it won't
set it,
be
if we do it
within
on the 24th and I get it to them, their next meeting is not until the 7th. Because of the way
Oh,
the
okay.
weeks go. The first,
Oh, okay, then you'll
Rob
be,
will do it.
you'll be within 12 days then if you
Yeah,
get it
Rob
right
would do
away.
it anyway. He would
And I'll-
definitely do it.
Like also, I think I already mentioned this, but that training link I sent you guys, it just happens to fall in this week. So
That's great.
it's free. We can just attend. The link is in that email that I sent.
Great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the request for the zoning designation change on Beehive Road. I wanted us to just have a conversation about it to decide. As Mary Lou said, zoning designation change is a town board option. We either can say, no, we don't want to consider it. Or the other answer is we invite the person who's asking to come to a board meeting and present like they would at a planning board meeting of their requests to, they have filled out the form, they have supplied their documentation. We may or may not need additional documentation from that. remember, the whole proposed subdivision is not what we're considering. We're just considering rezoning that property. They're just proposing that, they're showing that subdivision for why they're, as the basis for why they're asking for this. So Aaron, let me start with you.
I'm inclined to not consider it because of where it lies in the R5. It's like in the middle. I know there's like a different zone around it, but it's like this. Anyway, that's my opinion.
You want me to put the zoning map up? I did speak with Jeff Fry. One of the applicant, according to Jeff, did talk to him about that if they were to move forward with this subdivision, they would extend the Beehive Road, town road. It would not be a private road. They would extend it down and create a turnaround at the end. And certainly everybody is welcome to discuss it with Jeff himself, but he did indicate that it would be a benefit to him for turnaround. So I'm just bringing that up.
You're
as a-
saying that the subdivision developer would bring the road up to town code?
Yeah,
Correct,
they'd have to. And
They
the
would have
town
to.
board would have to accept it. They
right,
can't do it without the town board accepting it.
right.
Correct. I remember that much.
Remember that from back in the day, right, B?
But Jeff,
Yeah.
apparently the person who owns it, who's proposing this. So yes, I agree, B. We can't say it's going to happen for sure because the subdivision isn't approved yet, but he has spoken with Jeff and Jeff is of the understanding that it would be a good thing. So let me try to get the,
If we did that, that should come under part of our conditions or whatever we did, if we choose to do any of this. It should be a condition or something
can we
somewhere in
give a
writing.
conditional approval, Mary Lou, to a zoning
I
designation?
don't think,
change?
yeah, because it's a zoning change, B, I don't think we can.
But you
I like
understand,
your idea. I like your idea.
I knew the answer. I knew the answer, but I was sure going to try because, yeah, I think that needs to go somewhere in writing. So later on, John Jones can't say,
Right.
"Oh, I never said that."
I apologize. I thought I had the zoning map on the other computer and it's not there, but I can find it real quick.
It's also on Parcel Viewer if you look up the
Yeah, you know what? I can just
That's-
do that.
property and
That's
put on
where I saw it.
layer, it shows it pretty clearly.
Okay. I always have to turn on the Rochester, the municipal boundary layer first. It's this one right here, correct? No. Or is it? Yes, it's this one. The road currently ends there. If you look at the map, it already is kind of cut into it.
Mike, can you
So-
put on the zoning?
Yep, that's what I'm gonna put up
there?
right now.
Thank you. There.
Now, what we could do is we potentially could rezone this small parcel as well.
What makes that area a conservation area?
Probably a couple of things, Chris, probably, the size of the parcels somewhat. Let me just see if there's any wetland. There's no flood hazards there. It doesn't appear there's any wetlands. The small one down here. My guess is, Chris, because there was no immediate road access.
Are there any hydric soils there or anything that? Probably not.
Nope, nothing. No prime and important soils. I think it's just, Chris, that it's all unbuilt land.
Uh-huh.
And I think that that's probably why we just made it all R5 as potentially protected to some degree.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
That's a theory, but that's my guess because it's not off of any. Nothing is jumping out in the in all the let's look at the habitat cores. Ah, there we go. Well, the property that it's on is this one, so it is a piece of it that is in the habitat core.
And it is that property, right?
I believe so. Do you have the application handy?
I do, because the thing, and I got confused about this because they're requesting AR3. And
Oh,
and the AR3 is like on the other side.
yeah,
And that's it would.
Oh, everything else is R2. I see what
Yeah.
you're saying.
yeah, if you
think
just,
well, I'll
change-
be honest, I think the only basis for requesting that is in the subdivision, he wants to do a number of 5-acre lots and a number of 3-acre lots.
I think you're getting awfully close to spot zoning there when there's nothing else around it, Mike.
Would it make sense to go back and say, make it R2?
You
Because
know what?
everything around it is R2.
Why don't you have him come talk to you and then you decide?
Well, that's true. And that's kind of where I was leading toward is whether we wanted to have him come talk to us, but I wanted to sort of have us talk about it a little bit first. so.
Or maybe you don't. Maybe you just are like, that doesn't make any sense. He can revise his application, then we can decide whether to talk to him. I don't know.
Well, we can always invite him, and that is the parcel right here.
Yeah, I do agree with Aaron that, and what Mary Lou said, you're awful close to spot zoning there with what he's requesting.
With what he's requesting, but we could talk to him and say, what do you think about R2? Only because it is totally surrounded by R2.
Right, or you can say the what he's requesting would be spot zoning. It's
Well, yeah,
something you're not likely to do. However, if you'd like to put in an application for something else, you may.
right. And that's what I think we either have a conversation with him as a board, or the board asks me to go back to him and say, hey, do you want to represent your application as an R2?
I think we should talk with him. I'm kind of curious to hear what he has planned.
Okay,
I'd like to hear from the applicant.
okay. So I think that's a good idea. So with the board's okay, I'll send an invite to come to the workshop meeting on the 24th. And we'll have him present to us and
Would we have him come early and do a presentation? I don't know how that fits in Aaron's schedule.
well, it would have to be part of the regular workshop meeting. We are going to talk about whether we go to in-person coming up here, and Mary Lou will fill us in of whether we're in person or not. Because if we are in person, then it's pay the bills and then workshop. If we're not in person, it's just workshop and then we pay the bills, how we've been doing it. So, but Mary Lou's going to tell us that. What by the end of this meeting, we'll know that answer. So I'll plan on inviting him to that meeting, the 24th, and we'll figure out what time based on what Mary Lou tells us. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Well, I don't think we need a motion for that. It's just gonna be, the assessor, resignation replacement. I wanted to just talk real briefly. Currently, we share with 3 towns, us, Marbletown, Rosendale. It's 50% of the time is in our town. He actually works more than 40 hours a week. He does 20 hours a week with us. I forgot, I think it's 2014 and 8, something like that, or 2014 and 10. He does more than 40 hours total. Mike had recommended that we go with a single assessor for us and let Marbletown and Rosendale share. I heard from the Rosendale supervisor who asked if we were going to do that, or if we wanted to have conversation with them. Tonight, I'm only looking to kind of get a feel for what people think about that piece of it. Do we want to consider, and we don't have to decide tonight, but do we want to consider having just a single assessor for us that can either be a full-time or a part-time position? We can decide what the hours are. We don't even have to decide whether it's full-time or part-time tonight. But the question is, should we be talking with Rosendale and Marbletown as a whole, with the 3 of us looking for 1 assessor? Or are we looking for 1 assessor and are they looking for 1 assessor? And they're just looking for some kind of input because we've got a little time, but we don't have a huge amount of time. And I will say, Mike put in an ad, and I emailed you, and I'd like to discuss it in executive session, 2 resumes of 2 people so that we have received so far. So B, you've got your hand up.
I think we should at least talk it over with the other 2 towns. I think they've been involved for so long that I think it's fair to them to talk it over and find out how they feel.
And I'm fine whatever the direction is. Gene just asked me what we thought and what direction we were going to go. And I said, I got to talk to the board first to see what they think. So anybody else have any particular thoughts? Mike's feeling was that we have enough properties and enough work that a full-time assessor for us works. But it doesn't even, like I said, we could hire them at 25 or 30 hours a week. We don't have to hire them at 35 or 40 hours a week. We could hire them at less hours and still have a different one. So if nobody has a great feeling, then or great inclination one way or the other, I'll talk to Gene and Rich about having dialogue with them about it. And then we can decide if we're gonna go the direction of just 1, then I just need to let them know so they can plan their own. Aaron?
I mean, I think we should talk to them. I'm just curious. I'm embarrassed that I don't know the answer to this question. Does that position come with benefits that are also shared among us and we?
Yes, it does. So in our contract, we pay 50% of we carry his whole health insurance, but we bill Marbletown and Rosendale annually, and they remit to us a certain percentage. It's based on number of parcels in the 3 different towns. We're at 50%. Rosendale pays a certain amount, and what I do is every year when we redo our health insurance policy with the new numbers every December, because their budget is like ours at January to December. The first week in January, I send them a bill for the health insurance premiums for the whole year. And then at the end in November, I send them a bill for their portion of the deductible that we've paid out for the assessor the previous year. So we pay our premiums and we get that money prepaid. We pay the benefit, the deductible, because we don't know what that actual number is going to be depending on his usage. We backload that at the end of the year, and I send them a bill at the end of the year for that portion. And that's how we've been doing it, and it's worked very well.
Okay, that answers I was just curious about
Yeah.
that how that.
And as
factors.
far as because they work with, it's a shared service, they're considered a full-time employee over 3 towns for retirement purposes and all that. And each town is paying their own portion of the salary. And within the contract, we have an agreed salary that we will pay him. It's a 7-year term, but I believe Mike has 4 years or
It's a 6-year term.
that's a 6-year. Thank you. I think he has 3 years left then in his term, because I think it was 3 years ago we did the contract. But so the new person coming in, Mary Lou, would fill out the rest of that
No,
term?
I was thinking this, I have to look this up. I don't know if they get a
We do
new
a new
6-year
contract?
term or if it's a
Okay.
3-year.
Because
I
I
looked
know
at
it
it.
expires on September 30th, which matches the Board of Assessment
Right.
review. For some reason, assessor's year is considered
Right,
October through
October 1st.
September, which makes no sense because it doesn't match up with anything with taxing, with valuation, but that's what the law is. So, okay, I'll reach back out to the other 2 towns and let them know. We'll have a conversation with them, and then we can discuss further what we think about that. The next part of it, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. I did email after our last meeting. I emailed American Tower and said we're accepting the extension of the contract, and I got back a reply that said American Tower, we're working through a middle broker. He apparently reached out to them and they came back and said we waited too long and they want to give us less money. But he's going back to them. The answer I got was, we offered you this in March and you're just getting to us now, as sort of I was like, you didn't tell us there was a time frame on it. He's going back to them and trying to get them to go back to the original, and he will be back to me with that answer. So.
Like, weren't there interim proposals from them from March? I thought there were interim proposals.
There was the same proposal. He just kept emailing back saying, what's your answer? So we went from 2 years ago at one amount to, and we adopted it. So the first 2 years ago, it was 50,000, but the other ones were not as good. Then they came back earlier this year in March or something and said 40,000. And now he said they're coming back and saying 30,000. And because according to them, the valuation has lowered since that time. He was trying to negotiate something with them of a guaranteed rental until I pointed out to him that our agreement, guaranteed monthly rental, our agreement is based on a percentage of income. So if the tower stops operating, raising a percentage doesn't do anything, because if it's 0 income in a month, we're not getting anything back. So he's going to go back and talk to them again. I haven't quite figured out this guy's role, because it's called American Tower Brokerage Corporation, and he seems to be the middleman between. They probably are the ones who negotiate the lease. I don't know exactly what their role is in the process. So, and then so Mary Lou, reopening buildings.
Yeah,
Tell us what we
welcome back. All right, so right now, we are still allowed to have virtual meetings until July 5th. As you know, that's been extended, month to month, sometimes week to week, over the past year and several months. Whether that will be extended again or not, I'm not sure. We'll find out probably on July 5th, maybe a couple weeks in advance. But you can have meetings in person. Those people who are vaccinated do not have to social distance at all. They do not have to wear masks. People who are not vaccinated still have to social distance and wear masks. So you still need one section at least that has your chair set up 6 feet apart, and those people will have masks. up to you if you had an in-person meeting, how you do this. You are allowed to ask people if they're vaccinated and require proof of that. You don't have to ask people if they're vaccinated. You're not required to do so, but you are allowed to do so. But those who are unvaccinated do need to social distance. If you're going to ask people to give proof of vaccination and either they're not vaccinated, they don't have their proof with them, or they just choose not to, then you would say you have to sit and, socially distant with the mask on. So if you feel that you have room to provide seating for both vaccinated and unvaccinated, you can have your meetings in person. There you go. What are your questions?
Well, we could give it a try at the workshop meeting on the 24th. I believe we're all vaccinated. I'm happy to say it publicly. I am, and
I am.
yeah,
I am.
yeah.
I mean,
too.
Yeah, so,
I'm not happy to say it publicly.
okay, and that's fine, Chris. I got no problem with that. So we could set up in our normal configuration. We don't have to be, as long as, anyone who's not vaccinated would have to have, any of us would have to be distanced and in wearing a mask.
Right.
Um,
I don't know if clerks are vaccinated or not. So if they're not, they'd have to,
understood.
have a table sitting
Yeah.
part a little bit.
And then we could put everybody else, we could have, as Mary Lou said, 2 seating areas, one seating area where chairs are side by side and one seating area where chairs are 6 feet apart. In the community center, we could fit a fair amount of people doing that. Because going with the presumption that we are 70% vaccinated, which is about what the county is telling us we are, that's what the state is saying we are. 7 out of 10 people coming to the meeting are going to be vaccinated. Obviously, that's when you deal with the subset that we're dealing with, you can't assume that that's going to be the reality, but
And remember, it's 70% have received their first vaccination.
fair enough.
If you're not fully vaccinated,
You
you
have to
social
mask.
distance and wear a mask.
I was wondering, so that everyone was comfortable on the board, maybe we should all wear masks. That way no one's singled out.
I'm fine with that.
I was going to suggest that too, because, because this idea of creating the 2 seating sections.
I know, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, if somebody is vaccinated, we can say they have to wear a mask. Mary Lou?
If they're not vaccinated, they have to wear a
No,
mask.
but
You can't- no, I don't think.
if somebody is vaccinated, we can't mandate that.
No, they
wear
don't have
masks
to
in
wear a
the
mask.
building.
Well,
Okay.
actually, you probably could. You probably
I don't
could.
think I want to get into that challenge though, because so many
Right.
people have been very opposed to wearing. a mask.
Businesses are allowed to say you're still wearing a mask
Right.
in my business. So
Mhm.
you could require that everyone wear a mask. That,
And-
if you want to.
I mean,
And Mary Lou, what do you think of us doing a trial run? And then if we, based on that, we decide to change the protocol slightly if we get, do you think that's, as long
Yeah,
as
you
we're
can do that.
matching the,
what I was going to say too, Aaron, bear in mind, the workshop meeting has no public comment.
Right.
We get our usual attendees that probably will come. We may get a few extras just because
Big
people are
night
looking
out.
to do something.
and then
Now-
is the board fine with the honor system, that people just, like, otherwise we have to have someone at the door, like,
Right, otherwise you have to have somebody who's gonna check that.
We can do that if we want to. It's going to slow down the process, obviously, checking everybody in. How does the board feel? Is anybody opposed to the honor system? Let me say that. Okay,
You know what? You could always start with the honor system. You don't have to continue it at the
right.
next.
It can be a meeting to
Fine.
meeting choice. So I guess what I'm hearing is, let's give the workshop meeting a shot and then we can decide what to do for the regular meeting.
I think
Right.
it's because we have other boards and this way the town board is first. And
Yeah.
if, the other boards can see what we're doing. So
Well,
I-
Aaron, I actually was gonna give Sam a call and ask him about the 28th workshop meeting, what the planning board wanted to do. I will tell you, the HPC reached out to me today and asked if they could meet in person. And they meet on the third Monday, but their meetings are during the day and it's very rare that anybody shows up other than the board members. So I did give them the permission after talking to Mary Lou to do their meeting in person, provided they follow those rules that anybody who's not vaccinated has to be masked and social distance. But
I think it's a good idea because although right now we have until July 5th, we don't know if that's going to be re-extended.
right.
So let's work out the kinks.
Yeah. Now, one thing, and Aaron, I'm gonna sort of task you because you've helped me on this before. Let's you and I try to figure out how we can continue the YouTube stuff though, because, and it may be as simple as we invest in a camera. And like with the old days when Zolly Wynn and the Residents Association would come with a camera and record the meetings, and then the tape, in those days, the tape was then taken to Time Warner, who put it
Right.
up on the local cable station. In this case, if we can get somebody to be a volunteer cameraman, and then we don't have to worry about a wide shot, and possibly that's doable. I also think that potentially the American recovery money could be used to purchase this kind of technology, because it certainly is in response to the COVID to some degree. So what we're hearing is there's going to be a lot of possible wiggle room in some of this spending. So
Just make sure you get out there that the meeting is going to be in person.
yeah, and unfortunately, because we won't be able we'll do it on the website and we will post it in the newspaper, but it won't come out until the day of the meeting.
Yeah, how is, is it posted right now in the legal notice at the beginning of the year? Was it an either or? Was it
I have to go back and look and I don't remember.
so let's be sure. You can always show it on
Yeah.
Zoom too, so both are available.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we're gonna get
Is nice.
I'm not sure we'll get the workshop meeting on Zoom, but Erin's creative and I'm sure she'll come up with a solution. At the very least, we can do a wide shot. Because it'll be much better because we can now be closer together. So it's not like when we were at either end of a 6-foot table so far apart. We'll be much closer to each other.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking for next week, we use that microphone you got, do a wide shot.
Yep, and put that in the middle of the table and go from there.
At least it will still be on YouTube for everyone.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So we'll do that. Next. So what's the board's feeling? Do we want to address that resolution prior to going executive session, or do you want to wait till after executive session? I emailed you the proposal. We had talked about getting an appraisal of that property. That was the proposal that came back to me. And it can be done by early July. So, but if we want to talk in more detail, we should probably go into executive session.
I'm personally comfortable making the decision based on the information that I've already received. But
Okay. Anybody else feel different? If not, we'll go ahead and do that resolution and then we can go into executive session. Okay, so I'm going to make the resolution. The town board authorizes the supervisor to sign an agreement between the town of Rochester and Hudson Valley Appraisal Corporation, PO Box 1004, Port Ewan, New York 12466, in the amount of $4,000 for professional services. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Christina, sorry, Roll call
I'm
vote?
here.
And can we discuss this a little bit?
Oh,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
you don't-
discussion.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, B. I apologize.
That's okay, no problem. If we decide to do this, we've gotten one number. Do we need three? Or because, if I'm correct, it's professional services, is that correct?
It's professional services, so you don't need to go.
Thank
through
you.
Procurement
Yep.
policy.
Okay.
And
I
I will
just-
tell you, I independently asked Mary Lou and Mike Dunham, which appraisal firm should I go with? And both of them independently said the one we're going with. I
Yeah.
reached out to them and they got me a price the next day. Initially, they said 6 to 8 weeks. I said, ooh, can you do it quicker? I said, how about the first week of July? And he called me back and said, we can do it. So.
Sorry, I have another question.
That's fine.
Is there a reason that we're not outwardly discussing what this is in regard to?
Because we're gonna be negotiating a contract. It's a acquisition, sale, or lease of real property. I think it's probably not fair right now. What do you say, Mary Lou?
Because it's a property we're interested in, you don't really want to be naming that kind of thing.
That's mine.
Yeah,
You can see where it could backfire.
I think, you know, the purpose of this is to get the appraisal and then have the discussion and enter in negotiations, and then we talk about it.
So we're looking at this monies as an investment. Is that correct? Of a sort,
That's-
sort.
That's the way I'm considering it. For the time, this we can say in public, if this would be a permissive referendum, or the board could send it directly to referendum. Mary Lou and I looked into when we would have to do a resolution in order to get it on the November ballot, which would be free for us as opposed to it being a special election. And that is, I think I saw the date of, do you remember, Mary? It was mid-August.
It was mid-August. I cannot
I
remember.
want to
the
say it was
exact
like
date.
the 16th or the 20th, and I apologize, it went out of my head, but it was somewhere in that time frame. So by getting this appraisal back the first week in July, essentially say we're going to get this appraisal back 4th of July timeframe. That gives us 2 to 3 weeks to have discussions on adopt the resolution in time to get it on the ballot. I think if we wait for the other stuff, and this is where we're getting into parts I don't want to really say in public meeting, so,
That's fine, Mike.
okay, I
Okay.
appreciate it. So, I had a motion and I had a second, right? And then we did discussion. So, any more discussion? Okay, Christina, roll call?
got it. Councilwoman Allen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Howland Depew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock.
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Okay, I will sign it and notify them tomorrow. Thank you. Next, recommended motion to enter an executive session at
9:01.
9:01 PM. For the purposes of, we're gonna get rid of B, it's no longer necessary, so it's going to be the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property and matters leading to the appointment of employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular persons. And actually, it does need to say persons plural. So I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Christina, roll call vote?
Councilwoman Allen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Howland Depew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Okay, Christina, thank you. I don't anticipate we're gonna do any resolutions out of executive, so
Okay,
no need for you to wait around for us unless you're still down the hall and I'll yell down the hall to you.
okay, that sounds good. Yep.
He's like, you
Okay,
keep yelling, I'll be gone.
I'm gonna stop recording.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
Bye, Christina.
Thank you, Christina, for filling in.